The desert night was colder than bone, the kind of merciless chill that seeped through body armor and wrapped itself around the hearts of the 8 Navy SEALs, moving silently through the jagged terrain, each man alert, each man tense, their boots crunching softly on gravel as they advanced toward the village that intelligence had marked as the site of a hidden weapons cache. Yet deep inside, even before Commander Rourke raised his fist to halt them at the ridge, every man felt the same gnawing unease, because the briefing hours earlier had been sloppy, the satellite images blurred, the urgency too forced, and now, as they stared at the dark, silent cluster of ruined homes below, where not even a stray dog barked nor a light flickered, it was obvious that something was wrong, so wrong that it felt less like a mission and more like bait. Still, orders were orders, so they slid down, fanning out, rifles sweeping corners, eyes scanning shadows, until the first explosion ripped behind them, a thunderclap of fire and dirt that flung 2 men to the ground as mortars began raining. From the cliffs, and before they could recover, machine gun fire stitched the night, and they realized with horror that they had walked into a perfect ambush. Dozens of insurgents poured from caves and hidden tunnels, surrounding them in a storm of fire and steel. And though the SEALs fought back with ruthless precision, discipline in every movement, they were trapped in a kill box with no air support, no extraction, and no way out. Their comms dead, their squad split by collapsing walls. 3 already wounded and bleeding, the enemy closing in with terrifying chants that grew louder with each passing second. Rourke barked orders, his voice like gravel in the chaos, and his men moved like wolves cornered, firing, reloading, dragging the injured into cover, but the truth pressed down heavier with every heartbeat. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and seconds away from being slaughtered. Then, just as despair clawed at their minds, it happened. A single sharp crack split the night, clean, precise, unlike the wild sprays of enemy rifles, and 1 insurgent dropped dead, then another, then a third, confusion spreading through there. Ranks, as more fell, picked off with inhuman accuracy by shots that came not from the SEALs' rifles, but from high above, hidden in the jagged rocks overlooking the valley, where no overwatch was supposed to exist. The SEALs froze in momentary disbelief, exchanging quick, stunned glances because no sniper had been assigned to their mission, no friendly eye was supposed to be watching them, yet someone was up there, killing with surgical efficiency, saving them 1 bullet at a time. And though instinct told Rourke to trust nothing in a place where death wore many masks, desperation left no room for doubt. Whoever was in those rocks had chosen their side, at least for now. Taking advantage of the chaos, the SEALs rallied, pulling the wounded back, tightening their defenses, and striking hard at the distracted fighters. But as the fight dragged on, as the smoke thickened and the cries of dying men echoed off the stone, one chilling realization bled through the adrenaline. This was never about finding a weapons cache. It was a setup from the beginning. The warlord had wanted them here, wanted them erased, wanted them broken beneath his trap, and someone, some unseen force, had not only known it would happen, but had chosen this exact moment to intervene. And though their mysterious savior was keeping them alive, the darkest truth was still waiting, lurking just beyond the next crack of that rifle. Dawn bled slowly across the valley, painting the rocks in shades of red that looked too much like blood, and the SEALs, battered and bleeding, dragged themselves into a half-collapsed building to regroup, the silence between them heavy with the unspoken question of who had saved them. The mysterious sniper had vanished with the night, leaving only shell casings on the ridge and a trail of dead insurgents, but no sign of identity, no radio contact, no signal flare, nothing except the knowledge that someone had been watching them long before the ambush began, someone who knew their every move, and while Rourke tried to convince the men that they needed to push toward the extraction point before more hostiles arrived, every step forward felt like marching deeper into a maze designed by an unseen hand, a hand that might have saved them only to use them for something darker. As they moved out, Whispers followed them through the empty alleys, echoes of enemy reinforcements approaching, and though the snipers' bullets had bought them a chance at survival, a chilling doubt gnawed at their minds. Were they really being rescued, or were they being herded toward a far more dangerous trap? By midday, the heat pressed down like a curse, and the SEALs, low on ammo and dragging their wounded, reached the jagged cliffs that overlooked the valley, only to discover fresh footprints in the dust leading upward toward a hidden sniper's nest carved into the stone, a perch so perfectly placed that it could only have been prepared long before their mission. Inside, they found empty water bottles, ration packs, and carefully stacked bullet casings, all signs of someone who had been waiting, watching, planning, and yet leaving just enough evidence to make it clear that their presence wasn't an accident, but a choice. Rourke's gut twisted as he realized they were not dealing with a ghostly guardian, but with a professional, someone who knew their tactics, someone who may have once worn the same uniform. And though the men felt a spark of hope that perhaps an ally was still out there shadowing their every move, the commander saw the darker possibility, that this sniper wasn't saving them out of loyalty or mercy, but because he needed them alive for a purpose they hadn't yet uncovered. And as the sound of enemy trucks rumbled in the distance, carrying reinforcements up the narrow road, the SEALs understood that the true battle was still coming, and that the invisible hand guiding their fate was not finished with them yet. Night returned like a curtain of black smoke, swallowing the cliffs and valleys as the SEALs, exhausted and bloodied, fortified themselves in the sniper's abandoned nest, their nerves frayed and their trust hanging by a thread, because while they owed their survival to the unseen marksman, they could no longer ignore the truth that whoever had been saving them knew far too much about their mission, their movements, and even their weaknesses. Rourke stared out into the darkness, his jaw clenched, and in his gut he felt the familiar warning of betrayal, the kind that comes not from the enemy, but from the shadows of one's own side, and his suspicion hardened when he found, buried, under a tarp of rocks, an old SEAL trident pin, rusted, scarred, and placed with deliberate care, as though the sniper wanted them to know he wasn't just some ghost, but one of them, someone who had once sworn the same oath, trained under the same code, and now operated outside all chains of command. The realization hit like a knife. This wasn't salvation, it was manipulation, and before he could voice the thought, the night erupted again with gunfire, heavier than before, as enemy trucks poured men and machine guns into the valley, hundreds of fighters climbing the rocks with the fury of a swarm, and the SEALs, backs to the stone, opened fire with what little ammunition they had left, every shot measured, every grenade hurled with desperation, knowing that this was the last stand. Yet again, above the roar of chaos, came the cold, precise crack of the sniper's rifle, cutting down enemies with ruthless rhythm, and for a moment it felt like salvation was within reach. But then the sniper's shots shifted, not just killing insurgents, but striking dangerously close to the SEALs themselves, grazing stone inches from their helmets, forcing them into cover as though he was hurting them, pushing them toward a narrow crevice in the cliffside where the shadows ran deeper. Then night. Rourke realized too late that this had all been orchestrated, the ambush, the rescue, even their survival. And with dread clawing at his chest, he led his men into the crevice, only to find themselves in a cavern lit faintly by lanterns, its walls lined not with enemy supplies but with American gear, stacks of rifles, radios, and uniforms from units that had gone missing in the region, their fates unrecorded, their names never reported, all evidence of a war fought in silence, covered up, erased. And suddenly a figure stepped from the darkness, face half hidden by a scarf, rifle still warm from the fight, and in his eyes was the hard, unflinching stare of a soldier who had seen too much and chosen exile. The sniper was not their enemy, but he was not their ally either. He was a ghost of their own brotherhood, a SEAL long thought dead who had turned into something else, a vigilante fighting his own private war, saving men only when it served. his hidden cause. He spoke little, only enough to warn them that extraction was impossible, that command had abandoned them the moment they stepped into the valley, and that if they wanted to live, they would have to follow his path through tunnels that no map showed. Torn between loyalty to their orders and the undeniable truth of their situation, Rourke made the call that would haunt him forever. He trusted the ghost sniper, led his men into the labyrinth, and left behind the bodies of enemies and brothers alike under the shattered stars. When dawn rose again, the valley was silent, the warlord's forces broken. The SEALs vanished without a trace, and only rumors remained of what had happened. Whispers carried by locals of American warriors guided through hell by a phantom marksman. Whispers that reached command back home but were buried in classified files. Whispers that became a legend with no official record. And though the SEALs lived, forever bound by what they saw in those rocks, each man carried the chilling question that would never leave them. Did the sniper save us? Or did he use us for a war greater and darker than we could ever understand?